Hi, it's Winton Churchill with the Barefoot Consultants, and I'd like to welcome you to our Christmas Eve Day Facebook Friday Live. We're talking about today three ways freelancing makes it more enjoyable potentially for many of you to partake of the holidays. In some cases, the holidays can be a stressful time. I know when I was working as an employee for many companies over the years that frequently I was, constantly between finishing up the end of the year and getting into the mode of the holidays and all that had to offer. And it was pretty difficult to balance. And if you're at all like me, and I know, you know, from experiencing this with a lot of the people I worked with, that we were all dealing with this. How do we wrap up for the year and fulfill our obligations to the company and do the best we can to make all that work together? And then how do we come along and have a holiday that's relaxing and rewarding? We all lived through the time when cell phones and even first pagers became a thing. That was the first thing that my boss could get in touch with me anywhere in the world with this pager that I had, and I would know to call him or her back, right away. And sometimes there was something that could be deferred. Sometimes there was something that couldn't be deferred. But I wanted to go through three things that freelancing gives you when you're going through this kind of stuff. And the first thing I notice is that you have the choice of how much work you put on your plate as you go into the end of the year. And this is a big part of the challenge, is you're having other people put work on your plate a lot of times. We got to finish this project. We got to wrap this up. We got to write a report on what we did in the last quarter, all this coming at a time when, usually you have a month to do those kind of things. And now you have 2/3 of a month or half a month, really, because parties begin in December, about December 15th, and other things intervene. A lot of times, yeah, bosses felt that you had more resources than you really did at the end of the year. People's attention gets focused on the things they have to finish versus the things that would be nice to finish. And so the availability of other people to collaborate disappears. And so the first thing that freelancing does is it addresses this short-term jump, get this done. And we've all had that experience of saying, jump, get this done, from a manager, a boss, whatever that person was in your life. And now you don't. I mean, you have a freelance buyer, they're buying your services, but it's a relationship from a peer to peer, a business person, freelance buyer, a business person, you, and it's much more negotiable. The power structure is much more even in that kind of situation. And your freelance buyer typically knows that as well. I mean, they're happy that you're an independent and you negotiate what you get done by the end of the year and what maybe moves into next year and that kind of thing. So that's a very important aspect of being a freelancer and jumping out there and having your holidays feel better than they otherwise might feel. The next thing I know is the long-term advantages of being a freelancer. And if you've just become a freelancer and maybe you're your first few months in, or 6 months, or even a year, uh, it's good because you have this control. But it's even better when you've been freelancing for years because your nervous system has adjusted to this idea of taking control of your life. And I know for many years, it was just kind of what we did to whatever the boss wants, that's what we do for the boss, and we're glad to do it. and that kind of thing. But in the world of freelancing, you have much more control of that over long term. And if you are just getting started or have started in the last year, what I'd like you to look at is over the next year, you're going to see how that control that you have and that flexibility that you have really changes your life. And to really embrace that. Some freelancers treat freelancing as if they were an employee, and that's a transition that I invite you to make, is not see yourself as an employee, but see yourself as a peer of the person that you're working with. And you now have the opportunity to negotiate whether you do one thing or another, or tackle this project in this month or next month or whatever it might be. It's not just a you got to do this now kind of environment. And I know that for many of us, particularly early in our careers, we were kind of the may have been the person in the mailroom that had to make sure all the mail got delivered, or we're kind of the cleanup batter, for those of you that follow baseball, the one that had to pay attention to things, get things done, get it finished, make it happen, that kind of thing. And so as the long-term benefits begin to settle in, I would say, that in some ways you become a different person. You become less reactive and more deliberate in the things that you do. And you take more of a long-term planning effect, because when a client asks you to do something, you want to weave that into the other things that you're doing for other clients and that sort of thing. So you've got to piece all that together. You have a different thinking process than the one that says, wow, my boss asked me to do this. If I don't do this, I lose my job. And that's the calculation, sort of, it might be on the surface or it might be deep in the subconscious. But when you're working for someone else as an employee, that's kind of a mindset that can permeate everything you do. And after spending a year or two or three not dealing with that mindset, you're different in many positive ways. I remember I had numerous bosses along the way that I very much enjoyed, and but the underpinning of that whole employment relationship is that when the boss says jump, you're 3 feet off the ground while you're asking how high. And that's a a triggered response. And for many, it's more desirable to get away from that response and get to the point where you're planning things, you're working it into your schedule at a pace that makes sense for you. Sometimes that pace gets a little crazy, and that's okay, but you're getting to that pace, and that's a good thing. And then the third thing that I really want to point out here, and this kind of leads to the as you begin to freelance and as you move past your first year, this idea of you get to pick and choose the kind of jobs that you want to work on. And this is one of the things that I see in many, many new freelancers after they've been working 3 months, 6 months, a year, is this whole idea of getting to pick the projects that they work on, getting to pick the assignments that they do, is so refreshing, and I might even say nourishing to your life, your nervous system, that kind of thing. I did a lot of things when I worked for companies. I was involved with marketing and in the early days in sales, and in some cases operations, and sort of like many of you have worked across the entire spectrum of companies at different times and different places. And what I really enjoyed was being creative. And just as a sidebar, one of the places that I could be very creative is when I was explaining something to people. And I usually had to explain it to, 10, 20, 30, 100 people at a whack. And so I had to spend a lot of time making presentations, which I really enjoyed, creating presentations, delivering presentations, doing the question and answer, that kind of thing. And it was probably only about 10% of my job, but it's something I enjoyed immensely. And as I went out and started freelancing, those were the kind of things that attracted me, was doing helping companies put together their strategic plans. And these are mostly smaller companies where you're kind of having an influence on how things work out. And so it was great to begin to do that and have something that was a relatively small part of my career, and the subject matter was technology and databases and computers and disk drives and all that kind of stuff. And it moved once I went out on my own to talking about ways to make your company better. And after I moved to Mexico 17 years ago now, it was all about how to be a freelancer, and so that's a delightful topic to think about to this day. A big part of my time is spent on doing presentations, but it's more than that. It's thinking about the people that we serve, which are basically people that are 50 and over. That's largely baby boomers, but the youngest baby boomer today is 54 years old. And so now what we're seeing in terms of people coming into our programs is people in their 50s and even late 40s who are saying, I want something better than this employment situation that I'm in, when having all been through the pandemic and still on the tail end of it right now. We're looking for ways to have meaning in our life going forward. We realize that life is precious, and we all kind of got put on pause for the better part of 2 years, and that's not a comfortable feeling. And we want to take advantage as much as we can with life as it goes forward. And things come along that interrupt your ability to do that. These are natural parts of life. But if we're going to move forward, and we're going to a component of our life is going to be earning, and we want that earning to be intellectually rewarding, challenging, enjoyable, we're probably not going to do that as an employee in a company. And what I saw among many of my peers is that, as you hit that 50 mark, you don't get the best assignments anymore, and you're not called into the meetings where somebody wants to know your perspective. As one of our coaches says, he got kicked to the curb. That's a little bit what the feeling is like. And at least for me, that's when I went out on my own as a freelancer and just found it so much more rewarding than fooling around, trying to keep a whole bunch of people happy. Half of them who were crazy anyway, who had unrealistic expectations, or just didn't have the experience to understand what was going on. So that ability to work on the things that you want to work on is enormous in terms of what that does to your psyche, where you're going, how you're going to feel a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now. And I think back on, when I made this transition, and there have certainly been times as I was making the transition, and even today, where I feel like I'm working at a pace, the same pace that I might have been working for an employer. The difference is that I'm working on things that I want to do and enjoy doing, rather than working on things that the boss um, wants me to do, or the company needs me to do. And I recognize that the company does need you to do those things, or they need somebody to do them. And I was always willing to step up and do those when I was there, just like I'm always willing to step up and do those now as they present themselves. And oftentimes this comes from positive improvement, opportunity, that kind of thing. It can all be good in that context. But now the actual doing of the work is more stuff that I enjoy doing than it is stuff that I don't enjoy doing. So, just wanted to bring that to you at the holiday time. This is a great time for reflecting on where you are and what's transpired in the last year, and especially where you're going. And I think we all, we're dealing with this new variant, and we don't know where that's going to lead. But a lot of the early sort of indications are that it's much less impactful than the previous versions of this thing. And some of the people that I watch say that viruses, when they mutate, tend to get less uh, uh, I guess lower symptoms, minimal symptoms, which is great, which means a lot of people are not getting anywhere near as sick as they were before. We've got the whole vaccine situation that's helping prevent the most serious symptoms, it seems, if you look at the science on that. And so, we've got good things happening. So maybe more than any year in our lifetime, this is going to be the year where, thinking about what we're going to do is different, because we've all been cooped up, we've all been restricted, we've all not been able to travel, not been able to see our friends in many cases, or family members. And what happens, what do we do, where do we go, how do we shape our life going forward when all those restrictions either disappear or become much less of a factor in terms of what we do. So I would like you to use this time over the holidays to reflect and think about what's possible for you. And there may be freelancing in your future, there may be travel in your future, but begin to think about the what's possible uh, uh, going forward, because we're all looking forward to living lives much differently in the coming year than we did in the last one, I think. So with that, I'd like to thank you for stopping by. I'd like to thank all of those of you that are watching this on the replay. Um, Looking forward to a little rest and relaxation over the holidays, and then in the new year, getting off to a good start, and everybody creating the best, most positive version of themselves that they can. So with that, I'll sign off. Thanks. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. We will be here next Friday. So just before New Year, we'll do a New Year's Eve kind of a thing. And then we'll be off again to a fully stacked and engaged new year. So thank you very much. Take care.